Hello, and welcome to the re-recording of Monday night's Town Hall Financial Strategic Roadmap meeting. I'm David Grotenhuis. I'm the head of school at Crown Point Christian, and I'm just going to take some time to roll through some slides that we shared at the Town Hall meeting on Monday, and we'll talk about next steps in just a moment. The first thing I wanted to, at the last town hall meeting, we opened up a Google form, and anybody who had questions. There were two questions submitted following that Google form. The first question is, am I able to see overviews of the Bible curricula that are being considered? That process of selecting a Bible curricula is not scheduled to begin until next year, although we do have a group of teachers who are having discussions about that. I do see the value in allowing different parties of stakeholders, such as teachers and parents, to have the opportunity to see some of that material prior to us selecting a curriculum. And I want to be careful that we don't have too many cooks in the kitchen. So we will, as staff, look through different curricula and likely bring some options to Crown Point Christian Schools School Improvement Advisory Council and give them the opportunity to review it. Once we make a selection, there will likely be a rollout and some information shared with our parents and community. The second question is, will the position of spiritual director be part-time or full-time? In the strategic roadmap, the spiritual life director position is a full-time position. The process of determining the job description of that spiritual life director, again, does not begin until next year. And the onboarding, I believe, doesn't happen until the following year. So we don't know exactly what that position is going to look like. We're not even certain it's going to be titled spiritual life director. We do have a desire to have a position as it's described in the strategic roadmap, and we'll be considering, what the roles and responsibilities of that individual will be as we get closer to hiring for that position. I'd like to begin with one of my favorite quotes. That's from James Adair. He's a consultant, and the idea of sustainability in organizations is often discussed, and James Adair defined sustainability with the following quote: "The ability to offer an ever improving, high quality, mission-driven education to a full complement of mission-appropriate students by highly competent faculty utilizing exemplary facilities and programs that are fully funded." This is as encompassing of a definition of sustainability as I've seen. And this strategic roadmap is designed to move Crown Point Christian School towards sustainability as we built it. The next thing I'd like to just share with you is, again, the strategic roadmap process that was followed was an extensive process. Crown Point Christian School strategic roadmap planning began in November of 2020 with focus groups. They did focus groups with students, with teachers, with several groups of parents, with board members. And then over the course of a few months, board members took that raw data and noticed 5 key themes. They were called buckets at that time. In the strategic roadmap, you'll see them identified as impact areas. They then selected 35 association members made up of teachers, parents, board members, admin team members, who were 7 people were assigned to each of the 5 impact areas. And then in September of 21, they began the process of designing the slides that we shared at the last association meeting, the slides that look like this. They developed an aspirational statement. They developed the strategies, the desired outcomes, and the success indicators. And then in November of 21, the admin team began the process of operationalizing it. In other words, taking the contents of these slides and accounting for two finite things. Number one, time, and number two, the finances. Um, we need to make sure that both of those pieces are going to work. So today I'm going to actually show you the slides and some information that was used to develop the strategic roadmap. So um, I do want to begin by reminding you, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, you cannot develop a strategic roadmap using the inflationary environment we're in. It will move the numbers too far to not being sustainable. So as you build a strategic roadmap, you build it assuming normal rates of inflation, and then you make adjustments as necessary to that strategic roadmap based on the inflationary environment. That may mean we may need to cut back um, on some of the strategies that we're desiring to implement. It also may mean we need to increase tuition further than we wanted to because we weren't anticipating an inflationary environment like the one we're seeing currently. I'm going to begin by just sharing with you a big part of our discussion of the development of the strategic roadmap was identifying, what are some financial health indicators, and I'm going to talk about some of these financial health indicators. There's several definitions in front of you here. Um, by the way, you're going to have a copy at the beginning of this presentation. There was a QR code. If you turn your phone's camera on, you should be able to download a copy of the presentation that's in front of you. You can pause this presentation whenever you'd like and review these things. But you're going to hear me use some words and talk about some measures of financial health. And I just want to go over a couple of them with you. Um, the first one I'd like to go over is that of direct income. So when you're building a school budget, there's two types of income. There's direct income and there's indirect income. Direct income is tuition that you can account for, that you know you're going to receive. It's based on the past. It's also based on tuition rates. So tuition would be considered direct income. Any fees that we charge would be considered direct income. Any payment we receive from another from an outside service that we're offering would be considered direct income. Crown Point Christian School does not take an annual endowment draw, and if we did, that would be considered direct income. So the other item you're going to hear me talk about is budgeting for contingency or budgeting for a profit. So Crown Point Christian School is a not-for-profit. That doesn't mean we can't budget for a profit. What that means is we can't pay dividends out to our association members on those profits. It is best practice to budget for contingency, to budget for the unknown. And best practice would have us move towards 102% budget contingency, and I'll get into that in just a moment. One of the percentages we like to watch closely is the percent of our total budget that is direct income. Best practice says you should be at or above 95%. Crown Point Christian is actually in a really healthy place as it relates to that. I'll show you those numbers in just a moment. When a school falls below 86%, when you have a market downturn, that school is going to fall into not being a sustainable school, because those donations then that come in from indirect income, typically you see those wane a bit, and it can be a really challenging environment. So we do look at direct income percentage as we build the budget. The third one I'm going to talk about is operational cash reserves. Those are your emergency funding, what you have available to you if something were to happen, or if you need to. It's basically to help you with cash flow. And then the final one I'm going to share with you is the idea of budgeting for depreciation. Christian schools have often suppressed tuition rates by not properly budgeting for depreciation. Um, and one of the things that strategic roadmap is going to address is to begin to budget for some of those depreciation expenses. Crown Point Christian School was built in 2006. We have some carpeting that is original to the building. Um, and of course, when you're depreciating, when you have technology that has a low depreciation cycle, only a few years, and we need to make sure that we're properly budgeting to depreciate and replace those things instead of expecting those replacements to come from indirect income. So here are some financial health indicators that have been established by the board as we built the strategic roadmap. So our benchmark is, so our desired outcome is that our enrollment is at 97.2% of capacity. Just for your information, Crown Point Christian School's capacity today is 946 students, and our benchmark would be 920 students. And the reason you don't budget for 100% enrollment is that you can expect some fluctuation in grade levels. Our current reality, our enrollment capacity is at 92.2%. The second health indicator is net income contingency. Again, best practice, our benchmark, we would like to be budgeting for a 2% contingency. So the amount of income we take in, our desire is that it's 102% of what our budgeted expenses are. You can see that this year's budget is 100.6%. Operational cash reserves, you can see that our current reality on a 12-month rolling average, we're averaging about 10% operational cash reserves. Our desired state is actually, we had decided it was going to be 15%. And in the school voucher environment we're in, we're recognizing that that likely needs to be higher, probably closer to 20 and maybe even 25%. And the reason I share that is half, right at 50% of families at Crown Point Christian School are voucher eligible. Crown Point Christian School receives payments in the last week of October, in mid-March, and then we receive a third payment of about 10% of the full voucher payments to the school comes in May. So half of our voucher payments will come at the end of October. That means that we have to cash flow from June all the way until the last week of October. And because of that, we believe our operational cash reserves need to be higher than what is historically a best practice benchmark for schools in order for us to properly cash flow from that June to late October. We're in a decent position at about 10%, and we hope over the course of the next 5 years to build towards a greater percentage of our total budget of our income being available in operational cash reserves. The last one I'll point out to you is scheduled capital repairs and replacement. Our current reality, about 1.5% of our budget is for depreciation. And our desire is to move towards a goal that 5.5% of our budget is budgeted for depreciation so that we can make the necessary repairs to our facility, as those repairs are going to be necessary as we are in the, let's see here, 17th or 18th year in our facility. The next slide I'm going to show you, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. When you do a strategic roadmap, when a large percentage of your income, when about 90% of your income is coming from tuition, you need to have a good idea of what your anticipated enrollment is going to be. So I'm just going to show you this slide. It shows you our projected enrollment numbers by grade for the next 5 years. We believe that these are realistic numbers. So you can see for the 2022-2023 school year, we're anticipating we budgeted for 855 students, and you can see next year we're budgeting for 889. And if you look at your chart, I see my video is in the way, but if you look at your chart in the 26-27 school year, we anticipate that we're going to be budgeting for 920 students, which would be at our benchmark. The next thing I'm going to show you, and you're going to have all of the slides to look through yourself, but just how we design the slides so that you're able to review the information and understand it as best you can. So I'm just going to begin with the finance and facility slide. At the last town hall meeting, we went over each one of these slides, and there's two more slides attached to each one of the impact areas. One slide looks like this, and in this slide, we're accounting for, we're demonstrating who's accountable and also what our timeline for implementation is. And then in the next slide, we're looking at what's the cost of this impact area. So let me give you an example of how this works. Item number 1 says we're going to develop a capital improvement plan that projects facility repairs and improvements for the next 5 years through focused fundraising and annual budgeting. Update the plan on an annual basis. You can see that item number 1 is not being addressed this year. We're going to begin addressing it in 23-24. We're going to finalize it in 24-25. And by the 25-26 school year, we will be implemented. We will have that plan, and we will be working that plan moving forward. You can see we put names in here. Christy Ruffin is accountable for the oversight of the implementation of this, and Jerry Fisher is going to be accountable for the outcome. He oversees said plan. So each one, so item number 3, establish a tuition policy, create impartial grant and aid policies and programs that provide access for all families. You can see that that's something that's in progress this year. We're actually quite a ways down the road in that one, and we will be implemented at the start of next year. I'm responsible for the for the oversight of this item number 3, and Paulette is responsible to carry out the plan. The next slide talks about these are the costs that we anticipate we're going to see as we build out this plan. You're going to notice of all the impact areas, this impact area has the highest, I guess, price tag, you could say it. I believe it's right at $1.2 million. That's because this slide is accounting for salary increases for the next 4 budget cycles. It also is us budgeting for an additional 0.25% in budget contingency. You can see next year, as we add 28,000 square feet to our facilities, we recognize we're likely going to need to add some custodial staff. So we're trying to account for all the things as we build a financial model for the next 5 years at Crown Point Christian School. I would encourage you to pause the video here to take some time to look over each one of these slides and make those connections. But I just wanted to demonstrate for you how to read those particular slides. The next set of slides is really looking at the overall cost of the slides. So we have 3 slides here. One is the ongoing expense increases by category. In other words, these are expenses that once they're in the budget will stay in the budget. The next slide, we call these one-time expenses. And again, you can look at the slides and see how we're utilizing those one-time expenses. The nice thing about one-time expenses is once you expend that, you don't have to keep those numbers in the budget. You complete it and then you pull it out of the budget. And then this slide is the total expense increase by category. You'll notice that our total expense increase is going to be just over $1.7 million over the 5 years of the strategic roadmap. The final slides I want to share with you, I'm going to go through 1 year and again kind of explain how we arrived at the numbers and how the math works. There are very complex spreadsheets that we're utilizing to help us with this process. Um, Christy Ruffin, my hat's off to her for the work she's done with that. But I'm just going to go through the 2022-2023 school year. You can see we budgeted for 855 students. Budgeting for those particular students gets us a net tuition of just over $6.2 million. Our other income, again, other income is considered direct income. That's income that we can account for. Those are fees. Those are services that we're providing or funds we're receiving for providing services to another group. You can see that number's right at 213,000. So our total direct income is just under $6.5 million. Our total expenses next year are just over $6.7 million. So the direct income profit or loss, you're going to see that our total direct income is less than our expenses. So our direct income profit or loss, we're actually losing $253,498. And then our net target income, we're budgeting for a 0.25% profit this coming year. So I'm going to go to the next slide. You're going to take these two numbers and you're going to notice that, next slide, you're going to notice this 279,000. This is our annual fundraising that we have to do in order to have a 0.25% profit and to meet our direct income shortfall. So again, I shared with you direct income coverage. If a school is at 95%, they're in a really healthy place. You can see that this coming year's budget, our direct income coverage is 96.2%. You can see we're going to be progressing. That continues to improve until we get to 97.5% in 2026-2027. You can also see this is our contingents, or this is our cash reserves. So our accumulated reserves, our desire is to continue to build those up, just understanding where we're at with the school voucher. All right, the final slide, probably the reason you're watching this video, is our projected tuition rates based on all the information we just shared with you. So I'm just going to go back to the slide. We are assuming normal rates of inflation. Our desire is to stick to this plan as much as possible. And we recognize the extraordinary inflationary environment we're in. And we may need to make adjustments based on that. So here are our tuition increases. This past year, we had an 8.5% tuition increase. And you can see for the next 4 years, we're looking at somewhere between a 4.5% and a 3.5% increase in tuition. You can see the tuition rates for K2, for 3.5, and for 6.8. And we're hopeful that we're going to be able to stick to these numbers. And again, we haven't begun the budget process that actually begins here the first week in November, where we will begin looking at salaries, which is a major part of our budget. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time to look at this important information. And I would encourage you to just take a deeper dive into the work that's been done. I'm thankful for the work the board has done around this, for the work the admin team has done around this. And I'm excited to share with you the plans of the Crown Point Christian School Board for the next 5 years. Thank you very much and have a fantastic day.